discuss. Friendships that are built on love can only end with death. If I could pick your brains, I would want to hear from one or two people through the chat. What do you understand are the requirements of the question? If we could narrow it down, what exactly do we need from this question? 2 comments or so, and then I'll put in my contribution. 2 reactions from 2 people. Then I can go ahead and share my contribution. On the chat section, I'm waiting. I can't really see anyone giving an insight. We have done a number of essays. Therefore, I would like a literature lesson that is involving ideas coming from the students and not only one person centered, so that you can also discuss. A discussion should be from you to me, sometimes from me to you. Anyway, let me start by just making it simpler and saying friendships built on love can only end with death. We are making reference to the married couple that are discussed. The married couple that is discussed in the story, being the old man, or you can call him the chief's counselor, as well as his wife, the old lady that he keeps referring to as girl. Those 2 characters will be the center of our discussion for today. Another thing is, we shall be centering on the theme of love. If you're familiar with ivory bangles, we know that the major themes are tradition. Another major theme is defiance. And also, we have the theme of love, which is also concentrated on. I hope I've been able to give an insight on what is required of us. We're looking at friendship. Friendship over here is of the 2 main characters. 2 main characters, the chief's counselor or the old man and his wife, into quotes, girl. He keeps calling her girl. And we want to center on the theme of love. How do these 2 people display love to each other? And their love doesn't end with any disagreement, any divorce, but their love is brought to an end when the old lady is trampled on by the elephant. That is it about our discussion for today. Now, there's a question I'm foreseeing, and before it can come my way, I think I would like to preempt. Someone will be wondering, friendship built on love. I know my learners will be able to bring out how has love been portrayed between the 2 people. But then maybe they might be at a loss when they look at the other part of that discussion. It ends with death. And because the short story covers a smaller scope, we shall find that our ending will always be coming back to the death of the wife, therefore bringing an end to their love. At this juncture, allow me to share also the different types of introductions, and I always concentrate on contextualized, general, paraphrased. And for the sake of simplifying our exams, we always want to go for the one that is simpler. And we've always said the paraphrased one is the simplest. Even without understanding the question, you just go ahead, change a few words, and after that, you have your own introduction, your own words as an interpretation of what the question is asking. In terms of simplicity, the contextualized one is also not bad. You directly go to the book and decipher whom are we speaking about, and then you come up with an introduction. Then finally, you have the general introduction, And if you want to expand it to type number 4, you can go to the general to contextualized, where you begin with general introduction and then you come into the contextualized, the combination of the two. On to my introductions. Allow me to share the screen. Introductions, and then I'm sharing my screen. In the introduction, I have the following. For the people using the phone, it should be as clear, as detailed as what I'm seeing on my screen. We already established the keywords of friendships and the aspect, love and the aspect of death. Contextualized one this time. I've rearranged them, but because we say from the simplest, so let me go to the third type of example. We begin from the paraphrased one. These friendships, because we are very sure we are speaking about a married couple, could you change the word friendship to become marriage? And then marriage, guided by the virtue of love, can only end when one of them dies. One of the words I've just tried to maybe create a word from it. From the noun death, I've been able to come up with the verb dies. That looks like a deliberate effort from my end to not echo the question. You know, when you say truly, and then you repeat the question, that one earns you no mark because you call it echoing a question. So you have seen the paraphrased one. We move ahead to the first one, the contextualized one. In the contextualized one, we are saying, specifically in the ivory bangles, a love story about an old man and his aged wife is brought to an end when the wife dies after getting killed by a bull elephant. In other words, you're telling the examiner, I understand exactly what you're asking me. You're asking me about the old man, his wife, and how their relationship came to an end. Lastly, to the general introduction that says, it is not a strange occurrence in our society that men and women fall in love with each other to the promises of ending things only in an eventuality of death. In other words, what am I trying to say? Does it sound familiar to our vows? The one that usually pronounce on the day of the wedding. I promise to take you till death do us part. From another angle, you see that this man and this woman were out to live the best of their life, guided by love until when death took away the woman. That makes up for my introduction. Allow me to stop sharing the screen and address maybe one of the concerns. Someone is saying, Teacher, I have joined late. Which story are we looking at? We are looking at the story Ivory Bangles. And as usual, we have a live streaming. We can always catch up with it later. But because time is not really spent as at this point, I can just simply tell you we are looking at the aspect of friendship. Which friendship is presented in Ivory Bangles? It narrows it down to one, the friendship of the chief's counselor and his wife that he popularly refers to as girl. And I wonder whether my students understand. When this man is referring to her as girl, what comes to your mind? What the interpretation should have been, to this old man, he still desires the wife. Despite the age, she's now a grandmother. But all the things that attracted him to this woman at a young age, they still attract him even to date. To him, many years later, she is still a girl. And up to there, I've stopped sharing my screen. And as has always been the norm, I want to discuss my points, and then after I've made you understood, I can go ahead and share a screen so that you can also gain widely on what I want to explain. Now, to my first point. We are speaking about marriage between these two people, marriage that only comes to an end when the woman dies. So at the end of each paragraph, I want my students to be consciously touching on the point of the woman dies after being trampled on by the bull elephant. That one will always be the clincher. You talk about the display of love, and that particular display of love that you have spoken about in that paragraph You go ahead and then do what? You tie it up with this aspect comes to an end when this man loses the woman to death. Another thing, even before I can go to my point number one, this book, if you could borrow from questions that have been set on this book, majorly they have been on the theme of tradition. On the theme of tradition, I'm sure if you are given that question today, you can easily answer it. So I decided to look at the question from another angle, of this couple. This couple, how do they behave? They are in love. Another angle you can look at this story is from the angle of defiance. You have been given instructions and then you don't adhere to these instructions. What becomes of you? But our angle today is on love. On my first point. My first point, I'll say the friendship between the chief's counselor and his wife is based on love, is a display of love from the way the lady takes care of her husband, performing her wifely duties. The basis for point number one will be based on the wife submitting by performing her wifely duties. Now it begs the question, this old lady is performing her wifely duties. Do we have the details of the wifely duties? If I could enlighten you a bit more, the wifely duties are inclusive of she is, how do I put it? She consummates the love to the husband, or we can say to try and also be using euphemism, a language that is a language that shows politeness. When you're considering euphemism, you can say she performs an act of intimacy. To students of literature, you outrightly understand the meaning of the act of intimacy. Where are the details of the act of intimacy? The act of intimacy comes in whereby the lady, there's a time, traditionally, she's calling the grandson my husband, and it has been put in quotes. My husband, in that she has named him after her husband. And we see that the lady, the grandson, he sometimes shares the bed with the grandmother. But then, not to make the child suspicious, the book notes clearly. There's a time the woman sneaks away and she goes to make love or to have a moment of intimacy with her husband, which is in line with love. If you have more details than that, even the way she touches his back and all that, you can also add to this. Apart from that, I can see someone already giving me an insight. Someone says, by cooking to the old man, feeding the old man, the person who has given me this point, it is the person is actually very correct. But then, even as we are giving other details, performing intimacy with the husband, another thing, this woman washes and massages the old man. Before, even if you could take it in terms of details of what happened, she takes water and she washes a grown-up man. What would make her to wash a grown-up man? It is her own way to display an act of love. After which she massages the old man using unguent. Unguent is like something you can apply on yourself, like a cream. For lack of a better word, let me call it a cream. Unguent, to the extent that his taut muscles, they relax. That was an act of love from this woman. In her submission, she believes making love to this man, washing this man who can wash himself, massaging him to relax his muscles. And the book says the muscles stopped the muscles stopped being like dogs with bad teeth. When they're trying to give some kind of a metaphor, his muscles were strained. But then after the massaging with unguent, the man's muscles relax. Furthermore, now the point had been given, if I could just expound on it, we are being told the woman still in her performance of wifely duties. She prepares him a meal, and who recalls what did the meal entail? These are the details you're looking for. She cooked for the old man. What did she cook for the old man? What did she cook for the old man? If after a minute I don't see an answer, that tells me my students are a bit lost. I need to find them. The lady cooks for the old man a pot of bananas and also a pot of meat and some bananas. You could just give an example. She cooks his meal, and even you see, even the man also returns mashed green bananas. Someone says mashed green bananas, and also there was the meat, the pot of meat. And also as a returning the love of the woman. You know, after your wife has cooked for you, the man appreciates her cooking. He says, you cook, woman. In other words, your meal was great. It was really delicious. Now we see that this is an act of love. Our essay for today was bringing out an act of love, and this act of love can only comes to an end because one of the spouses loses her life. On the same cooking, there's more details in the book. We have been given more details about the cooking for the man. And I want to remind my students, do you remember there was that incident when the woman had to go pretending to her people that the man has beaten her and turned her away from his house? But before she does that, you see, she's still binded by service, by her duty to the man. She ensures she has cooked his meal and even covered it well. All the details I've given towards point number one, they make up for a very strong point that there was the aspect of love, the woman taking care of the man, performing her wifely duties. And the man is in praise of her when he says, when he appreciates her cooking, you cook, woman. Later on, we now want to just capture the final bit of our discussion. This is a friendship based on love. It only comes to an end when an incident of death occurs. So, after all those illustrations on how the woman loves the man, up to there, you have only scored 2 marks. 2 marks in that there's only a small aspect of the argument that has been left out, that their love comes to an end at the event of death. Allow me to share my screen on point number one. Allow me to share my screen on point number one. You can easily read through. To begin with, the old lady takes care of her husband performing wifely duties, where she discreetly leaves her son. Over here, I'm supposed to say her grandson. She leaves her grandson and shares intimacy with the husband. She also washes and massages the old man using unguent to the extent his taut muscles relax. And I still insist, you don't have to cram. Even you can just say, she massages him using ointment and his muscles relax. You don't have to remember the word taut and all that. The muscles stop being like dogs with bad teeth. She further prepares his meals, a pot of meat and bananas that was tasty, and he compliments her cooking. Even before the elephant attack, she prepares his evening meal and covers it for his later consumption. Her dedication towards her wifely duties. Now you see, we pick the act of love and then consciously tie it to the fact that she lost her life, therefore she could no longer offer this service of love to the husband. So you see the way I've brought that paragraph to an end consciously by saying, her dedication towards her wifely duties is as a result of love, but unfortunately, this love gets severed when the old lady leaves the husband behind when she loses her life after being trampled on by the elephant. At this point, I stop sharing my screen. If there's no concern for point number one, I'll move to point number two. Point number two, I want to explain it very clearly so that when you just read the screen, it will just be an emphasis of what I've already said. Point number two, let's look at, love is between two people. We can look at a point from the angle of the man, or we can look at a point from the angle of the lady. Point number two, I'm looking at it from the point of the man. And it is an act of love for a man to protect his wife. It is an act of love for the man to protect his wife. How does he protect his wife? He refuses to give her a thorough beating. A man who loves a woman does not subject the woman to any form of violence. And when I've just said that, that one can only earn me 1 mark. That is simply a sweeping statement. The man loves the wife and he refuses to beat the wife. That is simply a sweeping statement. How can we build up on the same? On the details, even though the story has covered quite few pages. Was it 3 pages? Was it 2.5 pages? But still, despite the length of the story, each story will always be scoring out of 20. Back to my point number 2 on how does the man protect the wife? Let's go back to this. This man is superstitious. How is he superstitious? And he greatly believes in the seer. It shows that he believes in the seer because this man has slaughtered a goat. And then within the liver of, okay, there's someone who's giving a correct point. Just allow me a few minutes. Once I'm done with giving my points, the one I'll not have touched on, we can simply go ahead and you can also bring out your point after we are done with mine. Just allow me that. The protection of the wife and the refusal to marry, they are two different points. How does he protect the wife? Uh, Someone tells me, how does he protect the wife? Can you say he refuses to marry another wife? That is a point on its own. That is a point on its own. That you are right. It is an incident that happened within the text. Now, the protection of the wife, I started from the background information. The man is superstitious. As he slaughters his goat, he realizes that there is speck of blood in the liver. He goes to the seer, the traditionalist he is, he goes to the seer so that the seer can give him an explanation. What is the meaning of specks of blood in the goat's liver that I have just slaughtered? The seer goes ahead. He consults his pebbles, and the pebbles tell him that the spirits are unappeased. Unappeased meaning they are not at peace. We are not at peace. How can someone never have beaten his wife all those years when they were youthful, when they were raising children? Right now, the wife was a youthful girl transitioning to a mother. Later on, she ended up being a grandmother, yet she has never been molested. It seems to be their tradition that a wife beating is not frowned upon. It is something quite normal. Now, according to the seer says, you know what? This one translates to mean the spirits are unappeased, they're not happy. There's an old woman over here, but she has never been beaten up to her old age. Now, what is the remedy for that? How can you solve the situation? He's told, give her a thorough beating. After you have given her the thorough beating, send her back to her people. And you know, traditionally, when a wife goes back to her people, if you're still interested in the wife, there are some negotiations that will take place, and you'll pay maybe some price, and the wife will be given back to you. So the man, for us to see the details of him protecting the wife, he says, I'll pay any number of goats, any other way, please, any other way other than beating my wife. How can I appease the spirits other than beating my wife? And you see, the man is protecting the wife because he loves her. He is willing to pay a higher price. He says, quote for me the number of goats that you want. I'll pay them as an alternative solution to beating my wife. But the seer is insistent. The seer says, the spirits have already decided you have to beat your wife. And the fact that this man tries to protect the wife, even paying something else instead of beating the wife, speaks to the act of love that he feels for his old wife. Later on, we see that his protection towards his wife, every point shall be tying it as so. The aspect of love, and then you tie it to the ending of that act of love as a result of the wife dying. When the wife dies, the man will no longer protect her. In other words, he protected the wife because of love, and it only ended when the wife died. Sharing my second point on screen. I'll share my second point on screen. The point starts by, the old man loves his wife. And let the class not forget, this is a man who is superstitious. So when he was going to the seer, any other solution he could have been given, he would have gladly given into it. But then when it comes to, hey, beating my wife, no, I need to protect my wife, I cannot do that, which is a very strong aspect that this man loves his wife. There's something I've read in my write-up. I think I want to explain it. Let me tell you what I'm about to explain. Even after the wife complains of the seer's ulterior motive, that he had wanted to marry her but she refused, he is adamant that the seer is not the one who put the blood speck in the goat's liver. Let me stop a bit of the sharing. You know, multitasking, you're reading at the same time you're listening, it becomes a burden. There's something very important that we have read over there. It is supposed to speak to something. There's something it explains. What I want to explain is, as my class realized, this guy is a great believer in the seer. He does not refuse the wife's assertion that this man wanted me, but I turned him down. But still, in his trying to change the eventuality of what will face the wife, he still believes what the seer said, because at one point he is feeling, are you telling me it is the seer who went ahead and put the specks of blood in the goat? So to some extent, this man is still superstitious. But then his need to protect the wife comes out stronger than his belief in superstition. He is a traditionalist. Allow me to still share the same paragraph. I wanted you to see how have I tied up the whole paragraph at the end of it. When I share for the second time, let's focus on the ending of that paragraph. What does it say? The old man consoles her that there has to be another way of dealing with the issue other than beating her. Despite his protection as a show of love, he still loses his wife when she dies after being trampled on by the elephant. So the end result to this question will always be the same. The act of love, and that act of love, he doesn't stop it. It only is brought to an end because the wife dies after being trampled on by an elephant. That is it. And every essay, every story, no matter how short it is, the points will always have to be four, the minimum. The minimum number of points will always be four. So if you have five, if you have six, the better for you. Let's go to another aspect. And this one, I want you to pay utmost attention. As I'm explaining, then the reading becomes the second explanation. Point number 3, we look at the aspect that the old man refuses to practice polygamy for the sake of his wife. This one is a totally different point from him protecting the wife. Him protecting the wife had everything to do with domestic violence. It had everything to do with the tradition of wife beating. This time around, we are looking at yet a different tradition of polygamy. And as much, men do not like to be criticized in the society for being different from other people. So at point number 3, we see that this old man, there's a time he is brave enough to kill an elephant, and he takes the cowrie, the tusks, pembe, and he makes these adornments. The wife wears, is it 24 ivory bangles? He had made them himself, and a part of it he took to the chief as was tradition. It was an act of bravery. And That old chief, right now, the chief, as the story is unfolding, the old chief is already dead. The one in power is his son. But this man was given that position as far back as when the old chief was the one sitting on the throne, the one that who had the power. And people were frowning upon him. Whoever had someone who has been made the counsel of the chief, an advice of the chief. He was like a small chief. In other words, it was a very respectable position. And any respectable position will always come with expectations, responsibilities. They were now feeling, how can this man have only one wife? Even at a certain time, the chief is advising him, why don't you marry another wife? And this is the point I want you to pay attention. In answering the chief, this man, he posed a riddle to the chief. What was the riddle and then the interpretation? In the riddle, you are being told, the man replies, a certain man, a certain woman, sorry, went to the river with her pot to fetch water. A certain woman went to the river with her own pot to fetch water. That can be found on page 23 later on. When the woman arrived at the water point, she found another water point. The woman came back home with a pot. The woman brought back a water pot with potter's hard in, not water. I was just reading from page 23. I want you to get my interpretation very clearly. The old chief, the one who is the late, as the story is taking place, had advised him at a very young age, your position is not worthy of having only one wife. Marry another one. The man poses him a riddle. Now the answer lies in that riddle. The answer lies in the riddle. And there's a woman going to fetch water. She finds another pot. Instead of putting what had taken her to the water point, she ends up coming back with that word that has been used over there, which is potter's hard. Potter's hard are broken pieces of pots. So, in other words, what is the message in that? What is the message in that riddle? They're trying to say polygamy breeds jealousy. Polygamy breeds jealousy. And I'll even look ahead, I'll read on what was the understanding of the chief when he's laughing. But first of all, the interpretation, the man was trying to tell the chief, when you welcome polygamy, you're welcoming death, you're welcoming jealousy, you're welcoming witchcraft. In other words, I love my wife enough not to create for her problems such as jealousy, problems such as she might be forced to kill another woman out of jealousy. This woman in that story, breaking the pot, instead of coming back with water, she breaks another pot. And then the broken pieces she brings home. In other words, she has caused destruction to another pot. This woman, for woman to be in a polygamous union, is not out of their own wish. It is almost as an act of being forced. Then, further to strengthen what I've just said, to prove the validity of what I've said, the old chief roared with laughter. A wife, a co-wife, witchcraft and death, he shouted. Now, when they're talking about a wife, a co-wife, witchcraft and death, in other words, polygamy breeds jealousy, things, undesirable things such as witchcraft. This woman might try to outdo the other co-wife by even maybe casting a spell on the husband. The husband needs to love me more. So the chief understood that, the chief understood the riddle that he does not welcome polygamy. It will be a source of stress to his wife. It might even result in death of one of them. Then we move back to the way that we always we tie up our argument in this, our particular essay. At the end of each point, we usually say his refusal or his wish to marry a single woman is maintained. It only maybe that act of love, of cherishing his only wife, comes to an end when the wife has to die when she's trampled upon by an elephant. Let me move on to a question. Let me address the concerns and then I can share my screen. We're being asked, Someone said, can you say he refuses to marry another wife? This one I said is okay, but then it is a point on its own. Another one is asking, the woman loves the man to an extent that she clearly tells him that the seer once wanted to marry her. He promised her that he would not let her go. Gloria, your point is very correct. It makes up for another point that I have later on. I'll peg the point. I'll tell you how we'll bring it out. We're talking about how much did these people love each other. If I could just summarize so far, the points I've given. The wife performing her wifely duties. In other words, the wife submitting to the old man. Number two, the man protects the wife. Number three, the man practices monogamy to hold his wife dear. So also what Gloria has told me, I think it should be my fourth point. So I'll just tell you, Gloria, if I can continue addressing other concerns, I'll put it as my point number 4. And how will I put it across? I'll say they have a friendship. Their love is enough for them to confide in each other. How many people tell their husbands, another man wanted me, another man was interested in me in a romantic kind of a way? So that shows they really loved each other to the extent of being confidants. Another one says down here, and refusing to follow the advice of the chief after being appointed. Can you say that he ensures that he doesn't want to destroy the relationship? Royal, you are very correct. And I guess within my explanation, you had me mention this. He even refuses to follow the directive of the chief. The advice, it was not really a directive, but the advice, as long as he remains in good books with the wife. It does not matter that he respected the chief a lot. But then my wife comes first. It was an act of love. Another question, and then I can move on. Someone says, teacher, if you're given an assignment to write the points only, not the essay, is it okay to write only 4 points, or should I write all the points? To answer to this, we always try to stretch beyond 4 points. But at other times, a story might be so limiting, only giving you 4 points. But we shall never test you on a story, an aspect that does not have 4 points. It will always have 4 points or more. And another thing, we try as much as possible come up with very many points. You might think your point number 1 is okay, only to find your point number 6 was valid and your point number 1 was not. So try as much as possible, come up with as many points as possible. Allow me to share my point number 3 on screen. My point number 3 regarding the issue of choosing to remain monogamous. It is the one at the base on my page. The last point on my page, you can clearly see it. Being monogamous was unheard of. This interpreted that 2 wives were a source of bitterness as they may kill each other. This wife decides, you know, the anger, I've gone for water. But instead of coming back for water, what is this other pot doing over here? I'll break it to show superiority. You break that pot and place it inside the other pot. So that was a show of power. I'm more powerful. It was a source of bitterness, a source of rivalry. This man did not want to subject his marriage to such an eventuality. His refusal to marry another wife indicated that he really treasured her, but their love is ended with her death when she fatally loses her life after the elephant tramples on her. That makes up for my point number 3. Point number 4, and in my essay, I think I have 5 points. We are looking for 4, but I have 5. Point number 4, I'll be speaking about confidence. A man and a woman have to love each other so much to tell each other the kind of news that they share. If you could allow me in 1 minute. Number 1, You know that a man would be jealous if you'd have told him another man was interested in me. But because of the confidence of this man loving me, the confidence that this man trusts me not to go after the seer who was maybe my suitor, someone interested me in my youthful years. Also, the man, he displays confidence in the woman. Confidence, it means I trust you. I can tell you anything. When this man also decides he has been told something by the seer, go and beat this person up. But you can imagine the victim, the supposed perpetrator, is the one who goes and tells the victim, I'm supposed to victimize you. It takes a great level of trust. So, this is my point. You know what I like about short stories? If you could just master the details and spin the narrative around what was said and all that, you find yourself scoring full marks. So, over here, I want you to capture on the aspect of the man trusts her enough to even tell her when he has been told to beat her up. On the other side, the wife is confident enough in the husband to the extent of telling him that this man was interested in me and even the way a secret, something that is not so desirable to a husband to hear about, other people being interested in the wife, but then the wife is comfortable telling the husband about it. Screen sharing, screen sharing about the confidence in each other. It is at the top of my page. It starts with the point, fourthly, the couple are friends. Their confidence. Confidant is someone in whom you can rely on to tell your secrets. And you feel safe. My secrets are safe. They confide in each other. Even the aspect of colluding. The book told us, I might have found another way. And then she whispers it into his ear. What does that tell us? This was a secret between these two people. Their confidence. Even when they're coming up with that scheme, the scheme of tricking the spirits, they confide in each other. It is between the two of us. The details, we as the readers, we come to learn about it later. But the writer made a conscious decision to make them confide to each other, just the two of them, excluding the rest of us, the readers. Even the conspiracy, when you conspire with someone, how sure are you the person will not betray you? But because I have confidence in you, you are my confidant. We can even conspire. We shall do this and that. That is just between you and me. Even her people were not supposed to know that I was not beaten. Even the seer was not supposed to know. You sent the old man to beat her, but he did not beat her. It was a secret between the two of them. So the fact that they are confident is a very strong point to speak to their love. And as usual, their love only comes to an end when the woman is trampled on by the elephant. To my last point, have people seen another point that this man is gifting the wife? The man gifting the wife in itself is a language of love. There's a time he gifted her with the bangles, the ivory bangles, after she gave birth to their only son. And he even went out, killed an elephant, and because he's also a skilled carver, he can carve something. He carved it, and you see the way the woman also appreciates the gift. Something that you're always putting on, given by your husband, is an indication that I really appreciate what you gave me. Even as the story is coming to an end, even before coming to an end, have we noted the title of the story? Ivory Bangles. Ivory bangles had a significance. They were a show of love from this man to the wife. Even when she was trampled on, the ivory bangles, they had clattered. Clattered is they had broken, they had been stepped on to the extent of breaking, but then The fact that she wore them even up to her death was a sign of, I really appreciate the gift you gave me, and she is always adorning them. She's always putting them on. If I can share my screen on the same, someone has a concern and they're saying, let me go back, says, when the man giving instructions to the woman, I wish you could enlighten me further. Could you make your question better? As in, this one I'm lost. What are we talking about when the man giving instructions to the woman? Add some flesh to your question, or maybe the point you're adding my way, so that I also might understand it better. Anyway, to the last point, as I'm waiting for clarification from Royal when he says whatever he has shared on screen, I want to seek further clarification. But the woman was delaying, and in the end, the woman dies when she was thrown by the elephant. Excuse me, man. Gives instructions to the woman. Does it show love? Which instructions exactly? Because if you're talking about the ploy, I remember it was the woman who came up with the ploy. She was the one who was sharing it with the husband on how to go about it. On how to go about it. But if you find the page reference, you can always direct all of us so that you can also read and become even better, more thorough than we are right now. Okay, to the last point. Lastly, the old man risks to please his wife, as can be seen from his gifting of the wife. After she bore him a son, he risks by killing the elephant and even using the tusks to carve ivory bangles. Sorry, I think this one we should be sharing. In terms of reading, let's share it out. In terms of reading, I wish this one is share. Let's share this one. It is on screen. Let me read it silently to also give you time to internalize it further. And also about the bangles, we have been told they had been inscribed with the love messages. Love messages was the man's portrayal. It is his portrayal of loving the woman. So even whatever has been written on the bangles is a sign of appreciating. Another thing, gifting, and then there was a sign of bravery. Killing an elephant is not a mean achievement. It is not something small. Killing an elephant, even that is when he was given there, he was given a position for his bravery. And they're so beautiful to the extent that the chief is in doubt. You mean you made these things yourself? Are you sure they were not bought? The level of skill put into coming up with them was quite good. Should you support the point one of on committing duties when she and her sister-in-law with the groove? To Rogers, this one I'll answer by saying no. You see over here, see over here, they're digging the groove. And it was it even with her sister or with her daughter-in-law, the wife of their son? They had just dug some other time. So this one was not the wifely duties I was talking about. They were duties towards the husband. I am massaging my husband. I am cooking for my husband. I am giving myself to my husband. Those are the kind of examples we really want. So the support of committing to duties. She and her sister-in-law wedding cannot be used in support of that. That's what I'll say. And then also, as I'm coming to an end with this story, most of the time I usually make use of the kind of conclusion where I give a piece of advice that is moral to guide people on how they're supposed to do things. This time round, I've tried to take a different approach. I've been able to make use of a summary of the points as discussed in the body, and it makes the basis for my conclusion. In a minute, I share a conclusion that is a summary of the main points. A conclusion made out of a summary of the main points. And what does my conclusion say? It says, basing on the story, the old man and his wife exchanged many acts of love. And I've just chosen like 3, but you can even choose the 5 that we discussed. Many acts of love, such as confiding in one another, protection of the spouse, the wife performing her duties to honor her husband, as well as gifting. And it is so unfortunate that death had to put to an end to such a perfect display of love. In other words, I'm consciously concluding, at the same time I'm saying, these people, because of A, B, C, D, they really loved each other. And it is only unfortunate that the being trampled on by the elephant is what brings their relationship to an end, therefore meeting the requirements of the question. I'll move on and address a concern. There's a concern someone asks, how can you make a good conclusion? The same way, do you have a proverb that can relate? And I'm looking forward to the day that I will find a question that I have a proverb to. Because so far, I've always been ending in the same way. Whatever has been given to me, and then I give a moral lesson, or I choose to, like today, to summarize the points as have been discussed in the body. I hope I've been able to answer. Any other concern? Any other concern in 1 minute? Otherwise, I'll choose to move on to my next story. And the next story, I'll take a different approach. My next story, before I can share an essay, I think I need to give a summary of what this story is about. But let me wait for your reaction. Observing one minute, I'll just be silent over here unless there's a concern. Please repeat, I've not understood. Sorry, direct me exactly which part haven't you understood? Which part exactly, so that I don't have to repeat the whole thing? Which part haven't you understood? We are here so that each one of us moves at the same pace. The conclusion. Good. In answering your question, I'll say a conclusion needs to make a deliberate effort that you're concluding. That is why we refuse for you to go back to the question and just echo it. Truly, some friendships are built on love, and they only end with death. That one you'll not earn any mark. So now, someone has asked, what is the best way to conclude? And I'm telling you, there's a time I wish I have a relevant proverb to the question of the day. Even today, I do not wish to conclude with a proverb. But because I'm at an advantage, I'm advantaged because apart from a proverb that is relevant, we can also conclude by summarizing the points we have given. Another way we can summarize is by giving a moral lesson. And because today we are not really talking about something to do with morality, we are simply explaining an occurrence of how people have lived their life. That told me the best approach to concluding the discussion today would be the simpler one. In fact, the points that you have spoken about, go ahead and conclude on them, touch on them by saying, the question was about love between the couple, love that was brought to an end because one of them died. Now, in my conclusion, I choose to pick the points that displayed love and then all of them in togetherness They can no longer be observed because one of the people has died. The lover has died. Therefore, even the confidence in the partner, the gifting of the partner, the wifely duties the husband expected from the wife, his protection of the wife, all these acts of love, they come to an end because the wife dies. I hope I've been able to make it better. I hope I've been able to make it better. In the conclusion, have I been able to make it better? If you should give a moral lesson, please, madam, would you paraphrase on how you could have given your moral lesson? Uh, could you hang around for the next essay? With the next essay, when someone does something wrong, turn the question around. Like yesterday, we are talking about wealth acquired in the wrong way. Now you turn it around and say, we should try to acquire wealth in the right way so that we live a happy life. That is the way you turn it around. An immoral act, for example, someone turns it around and now talks about the morality of it. Yesterday in the Samaritan, we were acquiring wealth the wrong way. And because of that, we were not happy. Now, if you could advise someone, you'll tell them, you know what? Next time, acquire wealth by way of honest means. When you acquire wealth in an honest way, you will be truly happy. Just like that, it becomes a moral lesson. Now, I saved my next story for last because I know with this story, some of you are just turned away by the length of the story. I think I counted it covers 14 pages until someone wonders, is it still a short story? And because of that, even I saw someone commenting one of the days during our class that sins of the fathers is a nightmare. Let me assure you, it is not a nightmare. You are judging the book by the cover because the story happens to be lengthy. The story is simply about a parent and their relationship to the father. And what kind of relationship are we talking? This one I'm giving an insight. I said as I'm going to my next story, you can see so far I've not even shared the question, but I know you have the question. I shared it in the WhatsApp group yesterday. So far, we get to take a different approach. We understand the story in a nutshell, in brief. After understanding the story in brief, because I'm catering for the people who say this story is a nightmare. Once I'm able to decipher the story, you realize it is very simple. Nothing hard about the story, and I began by saying it is a story that captures a relationship between a son and the father. The name of the father is Rwafa, and the name of the son is Rondo. I would be correct if I call the son Rondo Rwafa. We usually take the surname of our father. The name that your father has, all the family members will be sharing in that name. That is the reason. If you hear me calling him Rondo Rwafa, it is still okay. He is Rondo, the son of Rwafa. Now, what kind of a relationship exists between Rondo and his father? The kind of relationship that exists between Rondo and his father is one of his father being domineering. Domineering means, I don't care for your opinion. I'm a very powerful man. I'm a total man. For lack of a better word, I'm a total man. There's a time he looks at his son and he feels, my son is effeminate. Effeminate, a male who acts like a woman. He lacks male characteristics. In our Kenyan society, if I could relate with your age, someone would tell you, even though it is not something I support, because it looks like something that has disrespect towards the women. When someone says, uko na umama, that is what the father tries to bring out when he looks at Rondo. And once I've given you this general outline, you'll be able to understand why the relationship between Rondo and his father is strained. The father tries to bring him up as a man. In his idea, in his own mind, the father feels being harsh to a man is raising him up to be manly. Being that harsh is what will make this my son to be manly. He doesn't know that he is making his son to be miserable. And that made the basis for my discussion. My discussion, I was simply trying to say the way a parent would relate to their child in both childhood and adulthood might make the child to be miserable. You know, the father is old school. The father believes the way I'm raising my son, I'm trying to harden him. He'll become a man. Little does he know, he really is making the life of his son miserable. The story continues. The father is domineering, and to the father, acts of kindness border towards being a woman. They are feminine. How can I be kind to a man? Being so kind to a man, I'll turn him into a woman. That is the feeling of his father. To an extent that this man, Rondo, this young man, he only believes that the person who loves him is his own mother. You know, women are always thought to be soft. So because the mother extends kindness to him, the boy is left feeling that it is only my mother who loves me. Now, let's look at the incidents in which the father has been hard on Rondo and they have been unfair to Rondo. Number one, at a very young age, you can imagine a boy of 4 years has been gifted a guitar by the uncle. And the boy doesn't even know how to play the guitar. He is strumming it tunelessly. The way you strike the strings of a guitar is what is the verb you're calling strumming. The way you play a guitar is the word strumming. There's a time now, a child is excited. I've been given a gift. And as the child is strumming tunelessly, the child doesn't know how to play the guitar. That is why he's strumming it tunelessly. And in a way, I'm still answering the question. I've just not told you guys that I'm answering the question. I'm giving the story. On the same story, the way I'm giving it, the questions, the topic sentences will be bordering on the same thing I'm saying. So even when I'm later ready, I'll just be picking the same point and I say, how has the father treated the son unfairly and all that? So, number one, we are looking at his childhood. In his childhood, Rondo has been gifted a guitar. He's playing it tunelessly. The father comes in and the father tells him, I do not want any. Does he talk about the Rolling Stone? And I don't know, Mike White, John White, not Mike White, Mike Jagger, John White. These are musicians. These are names of musicians. He does not want in other words, he does not want his son to be a musician. What is the reason he doesn't want his son to be a musician? He says, these people, they lack a sense of direction. They might board a train to unknown destinations. In other words, this person doesn't even think about, let me go back home. I have a wife and kids. So according to the father, a child of 4 years playing on the guitar will change him to a Mike White, to Rolling Stones. All these are musicians. And at that point, what does the father do? He takes the guitar. You can imagine, let's live Rondo's life. Let's live his life in our imagination. You are 4 years old. Your father comes in. He begins to cause a scene. Takes your guitar, breaks it, throws the pieces, strapments, pieces. You don't have to really cram, but understand the pieces into the fire. You know, a child of 4 years, what he thinks? What has just happened? The boy, it causes him a scare to the extent that the boy wets his pants. He urinates on himself. Euphemism is more on he wets his pants, but you've understood each other. What has happened to the boy? That is trauma. The son doesn't even understand who is John White. Who are the Rolling Stones? And the father says, no son of mine is a Rolling Stone. You know the proverb. They usually say that a Rolling Stone gathers no moss. But in reality, we are making a use of allusion. In real life, if you could later on Google, there was a music group by the name of Rolling Stones. The father doesn't want him to be a musician. He takes the guitar, and the details are what you're looking for. The son strumming away tunelessly. The father comes in, grabs the guitar, breaks it into pieces, throws it into the fire, The son is traumatized to the extent of wetting in his pants. He doesn't even understand who are these Rolling Stones. Who is John White that has made my father that angry? Plus, in just 5 minutes, I've been able to give point one. My question was, listen, some parents have no regard for their children's lives. And I'm mixing teaching the book as well as answering my question. If you have a concern, you stop me at a valid time before I can move that fast. I want to share my screen on the question, but before I can even share my screen, I still want my class to have at the back of your mind the approach I'm taking, but then the approach I'm taking might be erroneous if I do not share my screen on exactly what was the question. Maybe not everyone had access to my question, and I'm sharing the question on screen. The question says, some parents have no regard for their children's lives, leaving such children miserable in both childhood and adulthood. With reference to the relationship between Rondo and his father, justify the truth of this assertion, making reference to sins of the fathers. And even as I'm looking at my essay, maybe I might have forgotten to include the introduction, but it is not a problem. Even in my own words, I can just give you an introduction, but that is beside the point. Which are the key words? You're talking about parents, and because you're making reference to Rondo and his father Rwafa, so the parent is Rwafa. Let's note at the back of our mind, we are speaking about Rwafa has no respect. Regard is respect. Regard is consideration. I don't consider you. I don't care about you. So we are talking about this parent translates to Rwafa, has no consideration, has no respect for the child's lives, for the children's lives. In other words, for Rondo's wishes. And because of that, he leaves Rondo sad or even confused in both childhood and adulthood. A minute to pause on that. Because you told me this book was a nightmare, let's try and see, have we understood the question? Just 1 minute of your internalizing. Parents are Rwafa. What does Rwafa do to Rondo? Rwafa is always not considerate of what Rondo wants. And because of that, Rondo has grown up as a person who lacks confidence. Someone without confidence is miserable. Someone without courage is miserable. Someone who is not control of his own life, living in the shadow of his own father is miserable. And because at this point of how many lessons of essay writing, I think this should be our fourth one. With the fourth lesson, if at all I'm teaching and we are gaining something from it, on our own, we can simply come up with introductions. But because I'm here for everyone, all levels of students, I can simply try and come up with the introductions. I've not written, unless later on, if you could give me until a few minutes after our lesson ends, I need to share a proper essay that will even have an introduction. But still, we can just simply replace some words and say, some parents. Is there another word for parents? I don't think. So you can just simply say, a number of parents, so that we are not accused of echoing the question. We can replace the word some with a number of parents do not care, even no regard can be, do not care about the wishes of their children, therefore making such offsprings, children can be offsprings, therefore making such offsprings to live a life of sadness because they are unsure of themselves as they lack courage. I've simply tried to do what? To paraphrase my introduction. For the ones who are coming online, because I can see our first session in comparison to our second session has more people. Maybe the first story someone thought that maybe they understood it better. I do not have a problem with that. Welcome to our second session. We are discussing sins of the fathers. What approach are we taking in answering this question? We are saying, specifically, we want to see how Rondo treats, how Rwafa treats Rondo, therefore causing him a problem. How Rwafa treats Rondo, causing him a life of misery. Even miserable, you can change it to a life of misery. Someone told me, someone is requesting, kindly come up again with the introduction. If you could allow me, please. It will not look like the first one that I've done because I'm not reading it from anywhere. The wordings might change. I'll come up with it in just a minute, but then let me just assure you, no introduction should look like the other unless you are copying from the other. And because today I do not have an introduction written down, I'll come up with one, but then it will in no way maybe mirror the one that I've given before. But listen to this. I want to make an attempt at coming up with a paraphrased introduction. In a paraphrased introduction, we change a few of the words so that you don't get accused of having echoed the question. Now, in my own way of changing some words, I'll replace the word some with a number. A number of parents have no respect, or I can even change it this time and call it consideration. A number of parents have no consideration for their offspring's wishes. And because of this, they end up making the children to live in misery in both their young and later ages. What am I talking about, young and later? I'm simply replacing childhood. Young. Later is the word adulthood. Leaving such children to live a life of misery in both their young and later ages as they lack confidence. I've repeated, but they do not, one introduction is not word for word the same as the first one because I can always come up with as many introductions as the many number of students online. What am I trying to communicate by saying that? I'm trying to say no introduction should look like the other. Even the teacher's introduction, just 1 minute later, it has changed. But as long as you are paying attention to the needs of the question, you'll always score a full in the introduction. Let's continue. Point number 1, I told you about what did Rwafa do to Rondo? And because of that, how was Rondo's misery displayed? We are looking at 3 things. Rwafa, the parent, what he did to Rondo, the child, what was that negative feeling because of Rwafa's action? That is the basis for our discussion today. So number 1, the point on the guitar, I've explained it to conclusion, and we are also recording. We can always make reference later. Allow me to go to number 2. What does Rwafa do to his son? And because of that, it leaves his son with a negative feeling. My point 2 will center around an incident later. The first one about the guitar was when Rondo was 4 years old. Another incident happens when Rondo was 8 years old. What happens over here? The curiosity of a child, the lack of better judgment of a child. A child sees ripe mangoes at a neighbor's grove. The child simply decides, I can eat the mangoes from that tree. So let's go to the incident of the mangoes. Happened when Rondo was 8 years old. And the details are as follows. Rondo, upon seeing ripe mangoes at the neighbor's, in his 8 years, a child's innocence tells him, just go up the tree and eat the neighbor's fruits. Not every neighbor is friendly. This neighbor, He sees Rondo eating from his trees without permission. The neighbor decides, I will punish Rondo. What does he do? The story notes clearly, he pulls him by the leg. I want that description to register in your mind. This neighbor, you can imagine a child of 8 years. It also speaks to his cruelty as a man, as a grown-up man. You pull a child from a tree by holding on to the leg. And what will happen? Of course, you're stronger. The child will fall down. Despite Rondo falling down, someone will ask me, Tisha, this is not a point on the father. It is the neighbor who pulled him out. Hold your horses. I'm coming to the point. I'm giving the background. So the neighbor decides to thrash him thoroughly, give him a beating. And whenever you are beaten, it is in view of your mother will always feel the pain. So Rondo's mother is in so much pain, she runs out of the house and she comes to try and defend her son. And as a way of making maybe the man uncomfortable, she raises her skirt and tries, these are the details of the book, she raises her skirt and tries to expose her nakedness. It's like her imagination of cursing this man. I'm showing him my nakedness, cursing him for what he's doing to a child. When the neighbor sees that, and I'm telling you, this man also seems to be a man who reasons in the ranks of Rondo's father. He's a man who's domineering. He seems to have no regard for women. He seems to have no regard for children as well. He's beating up a child. The mother comes out of the house. The mother calls him, you child murderer. The mother goes ahead and lifts up her skirt. The man does not relent. The man says, you whore. A person who doesn't know the meaning of a whore. You prostitute. This man does not have any regard for the women. He beats up a child. The mother who tries to intervene, raising up her skirt, she is called a prostitute. And he also is not left without also insulting Rondo. He calls Rondo child of a woman. When someone calls you child of a woman, he reasons similarly to Rondo's father. He's trying to say you lack aspects of masculinity. You look like someone who did not have a male father figure. You are acting as if you are acting like someone who was raised by only female relatives. At that point, Rondo's father comes out of the house. You expect when my father is coming out, the neighbor will have it today. A father is supposed to be seen as a means of protection to the child. We're expecting when the father is rushing out of the house, he's coming in defense of his wife as well as the child who is being thrashed. But the father goes ahead and he also takes there's a detail I'm lacking, but we'll read it later. He takes an elephant hide belt. If you forget the details, simply tell us. He takes a belt and he beats him further. Someone thinks my father has come to my aid, but then my father is coming to help the neighbor to beat me. At this point, I don't know whether my students understood. Why is Rondo's father helping the neighbor to beat him? Rondo's father, his problem is neighbors are realizing my son is feminine. That is paining the father. How can my son be feminine to the extent that the neighbors are noticing? So, also to portray his anger towards what Rondo is doing against his name. You're embarrassing your father. Even the neighbors are saying you are feminine. He joins the neighbor in thrashing Rondo. At that point, the mother now realizes I might be the only savior of my son. So the mother is now moving between the neighbor and the father, from one man to the other, trying to beg for mercy for her own son. This is an act of the father beating up the child because of what the Not because of stealing mangoes. Some people are convinced he is being beaten because of stealing the mangoes. No. The father is embarrassed. The neighbor noticed. The son lacks masculinity. And that thing about the mother moving from one man to the other, begging for mercy on his behalf. It is a memory that has stuck in Rondo's mind, and he tries to forget about it. Something you're always trying to forget about it. The way your mother was embarrassed. It shows that it was a moment of misery to Rondo. I hope you have understood that point. The acts of the father and what they do to Rondo and the negative feelings they bring out in Rondo. Forgive me. Forgive me. Allow me to share my screen. I've gone through 2 points without sharing my screen. Let me do it right now. And I want you to pay attention to point number 1. Point number 1 was the guitar incident. Point number 2 is his father's failure to protect him. He cannot protect a son who is feminine. In fact, he's embarrassing me. We should even beat him further. And that leaves him with some kind, something that never gets out of your mind, a bad incident. We call it trauma. It leaves him with trauma. He never wants to remember that incident. The sight of his mother begging from one man to the other, from the neighbor to the father. I'll give it 2 minutes so that you read 2 points. I'll give it 2 minutes so that you read 2 points. The first one says to begin with. Number 2 says the father is also uncaring. Take your time. Let me put them in clear view. 2 minutes to internalize the points. What does Rwafa do to his son Rondo? And whatever he does, how does it bring out a negative trait or misery? Misery is lack of happiness in Rondo's life. Dad, you did this. Because of what you've done to me, Dad, I am not happy. That is what you're looking at. Anytime you're disputing a point, you want to see whether it meets the parameters of the discussion, keep asking yourself, whatever I'm writing, is it in line with the question? So any argument, take it back to the keywords. Parent, Rwafa, how does it treat the son in an uncaring manner? In the end, how does the son feel misery or lack of happiness? That is what you're looking at so far. I'll ensure it stays on for 2 minutes. Take your time. At the end of my second argument, you see that I bring out the other part of misery. As my paragraph 2 is ending, I'm saying, as an act of his father's years ago, Rondo is still haunted by the sight of his mother, moving from one man to the other, asking them to spare her son. That is what I'm calling trauma. What the father did not defend Rondo. So because of that, Rondo has some kind of trauma. How can my own father not defend me? Doesn't he even love me? He even had to make my mother do something embarrassing. Begging, please leave my child alone. Going to the father who's also thrashing him. Leave my son alone. So we see, it caused him misery. Point 1. Point 1 at the end of point 1. I've started from point 2. I'm going upwards, going to point one. What does point one say at the end of it? The wetting of his pants captures his trauma as a result of the scare from his father. On that point, I said, Rondo did not even know these people. Who was John White? Who are the Rolling Stones? But then, Father, you've scared me so much because of them. You've broken my guitar, thrown it into the fire. Are you forgetting it was a gift? And his fear was brought out through wetting his pants. Good enough time for my sharing of my screen. Allow me to go to point number 3. How else does Rwafa treat Rondo? And as a result of those details, we go back to seeing how Rondo suffers from misery. Point number 3, Rondo is found for a job by the father. The father does not even consult the son. And before that, do you remember that the actions of the father, we capture all of them, the ones that happened in childhood, as well as the ones that happened in his adulthood. So this one, you see it as an action that happened in his adulthood. The father, without consulting Rondo, he decides to find him a job with the newspaper. Was it called the Clarion, I think? I did not capture the name of the newspaper. He did not even ask his son, are you interested in journalism? So what happens? The son is he's forced into a career. We're looking at the actions of the father. And because of the actions of the father, they make the son to be miserable. So without consultation, are you interested in journalism? The father just wakes him up one morning. And the father tells him, wake up, slob. A slob is a lazy person. And at that point, even Rondo notes, he remembers all the times the father addresses him. Addresses from the father, they lacked respect. Wake up, slob. It is time you earned your keep. So over there, we are seeing two things. It is the same point, one building up on the other. The kind of a language the father uses on Rondo, calling him a slob, the father forcing him into a career. It is time you earned your keep. In other words, you're eating in this house, you're sleeping in this house, you also need to provide for yourself. Now let the story flow. Let's still looking at that point. Let's look at his time at the Clarion, his newspaper job. Did he have a good time? The answer is no. At this newspaper job, people turned Rondo into the butt of jokes. Butt of jokes, I mean, whenever people want to make fun of someone, they would make you the example. You become the butt of jokes. For example, the book clearly says they would have wanted to respect him. In other words, they did not have any respect for Rondo. The writer further continues to say they would have loved to respect him, but anytime they are making a joke, he is at the center of the joke, helping them to laugh at him. You can imagine people are making fun of you. But because of your lack of confidence to stand up for yourself, you're also helping them to make fun of you. And he, in fact, in his mind, he knows they're laughing at me, but if they take me for a fool, why don't I act as a fool for them to please them? You can imagine sabotaging your own self, acting like a fool so that you can make other people to have fun. And what is causing Rondo to behave like this guy, he does not have confidence. His father has always downtrodden, has always made him to feel lesser. And because of that, the guy never got a chance to develop high self esteem. Still on the newspaper job, these are the details I'd want to see. People are making fun of him, they lack respect for him. When they're making fun of him, he joins them in making fun of himself. And in his mind, he says, if you see me as a fool, why don't I become a fool for you people? Furthermore, these people are using him for their financial gains and other gains. For example, which gain? We are being told he would advance them monies. I feel broke at that time of the month. And because you know that Rondo is a person who seeks validation, he wants people to like him. He would always give them money. And also, he comes from a very rich family. Did I mention that his father was a minister? A child of a minister, imagine, is the same person people at the workplace are making fun of because of his lack of self esteem. Another way that people were making fun of him, another way that people were, sorry, making use of him, using him, they would also want favors by mentioning his dad's name. For example, go ahead and say, I'm the son or I'm the friend of Rondo. You don't know Rondo? Rondo is the son of Rwafa. These people would get their favors granted. Merely mentioning Rondo's father, they would get their favors granted. Therefore, we see they are using him. Let's move on. Still on the point. This point is rich. It has details. Still on the father finding him a job. We still see, despite his father finding him a job, the father does not believe in his skills. There's a time that Rondo goes to him and offers him a newspaper story about the Second Street murders. For someone who's not on board, Second Street murders were murders that were made to look like accidents. You can imagine someone kills you and then sets it up to look like an accident. And the person that was being accused to be behind Second Street murders was Rondo's father. You'll understand later why, whenever someone mentions them, he gets agitated. So there's a time Rondo takes it. You know, his children have been killed in what looks like an accident. And people are whispering, people are saying, are you sure? Are you sure this was an accident? So Rondo, he takes his story to the story in the newspaper to the father, and he wants the father to explain. The father asks him, did you have one of your more intelligent friends doing this story for you? In other words, even the father does not believe in the son's capabilities. You can't have written this. It's like your father telling you can't have got 90%. You must have copied from your friend. The same kind of thing. The action of the father towards the son, and because of that, the son is miserable. So if we could tie up this point of number 3, finding him a job. Despite the father forcing him into that job, the son was not happy. He was miserable. He is acting like a clown to get the validation of people at the workplace. They don't even respect him. You can imagine everyone at the workplace does not respect you. The only time they would talk to you is when they want a favor from you. That already proves it. The son is miserable thanks to his own father putting him in that position. I'm sharing a screen. I want you to look at point number 3. It has to do with Rondo at the workplace. Go down to the middle of the page. The point that has been written thirdly. Take your time, your 2 minutes. And as I'm giving these points one by one, trust you me, it's like I've redone the story. What you have not understood, it's like I'm bringing it to your understanding. Any aspect of the story I'm touching on, I'm helping you to understand the 14 pages of the sins of the fathers. And for someone who doesn't get it, sins of the fathers, it means what our fathers have done, and then the children are the ones paying for it. Look at Rondo's father. He's the one who had a problem with the way his son behaves. And because of that, he tried to make his son in a certain way, beating him. I don't want you to be a musician. Don't you ever make the neighbor know you are feminine. I'll make you do this job. But in the end, the son is the one who suffers. For the sins of the fathers, they are payable through their children. The children are the ones who suffer. And what I like about a short story, most of the time, the question will be centering on the title. What have these fathers done that makes the son suffer? I'm just trying to give an insight. But let me be silent a while so that you can concentrate on point number 3. Let's concentrate on point number 3. At the end of point number 3, when I'm tying up the paragraph, we are relating what the father does and how the son suffers. Point number 3, I end it by saying, his father having placed him there, as in that Clarion newspaper job, Rondo is miserable at the workplace. That was a clincher. Disregard for what the child wanted. Did he want to be a journalist? Did he want to work at the Clarion? Is he comfortable over there? That was total disregard for Rondo. In the end, Rondo lives a life of misery. Allow me to go to the next point. Allow me to go to the next point, number 4. And I'm also, in consideration of time, 15 minutes, you can wind up with our 2 points. I had 5 points. You can welcome your concerns later and then you can finish up. Another thing that the father does that does not augur well with Rondo is the refusal of his marriage partner. Okay, I'm being told to explain on how Rondo had become a laughing stock. I'll explain in a bit, and maybe I'll even have to take you to a very specific page, but I will. Bear with me. There's also another aspect where Rondo's father refuses Selina. If I could give you background to the, if I could give you background to the to the conflict between these two people. For the people who do not know, Selina's father is an MP, and this other person is a minister. They are both politicians, but one is highly ranked than the other. Then, as fate would have it, their children meet and they're interested in getting married. Before you can marry a woman, you would introduce the woman to your family. So what happens? Rondo brings Selina home. When he brings Selina home, the father asks him, who are your people? Who are your people? Selina will just be honest, and she goes ahead and tells Mr. Rwafa who her people are. Upon Mr. Rwafa learning who Selina's people are, he walks out of sight and he never comes back to the house. You can imagine, you've brought your girlfriend home, and then your father, after asking her where she comes from, who her people are, your father walks out and he's never seen again. The background to this was there's a time there was a conflict between the clan of Selina in the past and the clan of Rondo. Ndivitsi and the other one was Mzezeru. Mzezeru is Rondo's side. Selina's side is Ndivitsi. Or if you forget the name, you can just call him Mzevere. There's a time the father calls her Mzevere. And these people had been involved in a conflict, but Rwafa, who is Rondo's father, seems not to have forgiven the events of the past. I don't know that you have realized I've still given you another angle of sins of the fathers. Our great grandfathers are the ones who are in conflict. Why does Mr. Rwafa hate Mr. Mzamane? Are you judging me for the sins of my father? Now I've given you that background. He has brought a woman home. The father does not approve of the woman. He walks out. Let the story continue. There are more details to this refusal of Selina. But then the wife is very warm towards Selena. And because of this, Selena perceives her like the mother that she does not have. Selena, her mother is dead so far. Now you find a mother-in-law who is accepting of you. Selena and this mother-in-law, they relate very well. And because of this, Mr. Rwafa later on, when Selena is married into the family, he spits at their relationship. You know, he doesn't have to physically spit, as in kutema mate po, but the way even someone might look at you might communicate to the fact that I'm contemptuous. I have no respect to. How can she relate to this girl? This girl, after all, she is Amdivitsi. Now, about refusing Selena, the details are more, and they speak to the fact that these people decide our love is stronger than that, we are getting married. And when they're getting married, the father conveniently ensures he is out of town for some business. In other words, he ensures he does not attend their wedding. What about the financial obligation of the wedding? It is Mr. Mzamane. Mr. Mzamane is Selena's father. He is the one who meets the financial obligation of that wedding. He chips in a lot. And Mrs. Rwafa, who is Rondo's mother, also chips in a bit. Also chips in a bit. But the father had made sure my money not going towards your wedding. Your wedding, I will never attend. And it is as a way of settling scores with the Wadivitsi. I don't know whether I can call them Wadivitsi from that clan of Selena. You can just remember and say he's settling scores. But does he think about the feeling of the son? The feeling of the son when the father does not attend his wedding because he has chosen a partner that the father does not approve of. And also, there's a bit, maybe I've not captured it in writing, but it is in our book. There's a point that Selena was almost quitting on Rondo. If your father does not approve of me, why don't I quit the relationship? And at that point is where out of desperation, Rondo tries to, Rondo tries to convince the girl to stay. And that is when he tells the girl, you know, my father, there's even a time he broke a guitar that had been given as a gift. He divulges this information because of trying to sway Selena into remaining, like convincing her. Let me share my point number. For the people who have raised concerns, I will answer at the end of it because some of it will require that I directly read from the book, which will bring it out better. I was in the point of refusing his marriage partner, Mr. Rwafa, refusing Selena. That was my point number 4 in writing. That was my point number 5, sorry, in writing. So it comes as the last one. What does it say? Lastly, the refusing of his chosen wife, Selena, was a sign of the father's disregard for Rondo's feelings. Even if I've not put in, if I've not included a clincher, you can say, the father refusing the one that Rondo's heart wanted. You see, you are trying to cause my misery. This is the one that my heart wants. And you're the one who does not want her. So that one also you can find your own way of clinching it. But let's read on the details. He spat and frowned at the relationship between Selena and Mrs. Rwafa, that one I mentioned, since he did not approve of her. He had thought his son effeminate and Selena's clan shameful. This one I didn't mention, but it should be in your reading. There's a time when the guests had decided, Selena had decided, let me invite my visitors, let you also invite your visitors. So at that juncture, the two families met. And when the two families met, there's a time the father starts to rage on. he loses his temper and he says, this son, an effeminate son, has brought shame on my family. He is mixing his blood with the blood of our enemy. So, in other words, up to date, up to that point, he had still not accepted Selina as part of his family, as much as Selina had borne his grandchildren, the two girls. They are now related by blood, but this guy still feels it is so shameful. How can she bring such a girl into our family? So we see, still he does not many details as towards his lack of acceptance of Selina. At the end of it, I'll say this is a proof enough that the father's treatment of his son made him alienated from his own father. Truly, a father's disregard makes the son to feel miserable. We shall avail it later. Let's go to the last point, even though maybe in my write-up, I've done it as my point number 4. Were people able to read between the lines that Mr. Rwafa is behind the death of Mzamane, and in his exerting revenge on Mzamane, his grandchildren were collateral damage. Collateral damage, I try to mean, there's a time I'm going to kill someone, for example. But because you were with that person at that time, I did not have any problem with you. But because you were with that person at that time, you also suffer the brunt of my revenge. In other words, your collateral damage. So, background information, what had happened? What had happened is this. There's a time Zamane had accompanied Mr. Rwafa shooting ducks. But on that particular trip, Mr. Mzamane had planned for a white woman by the name of Mrs. Quayle to lose her life so that he can take over his land. And Mr. Rwafa had been able to convince some people are racist, especially during those days. Some people are against the white people because of the white people had colonized the Africans. Still on that point, you can still talk about sins of the fathers. It might have been the ancestors of Mrs. Quayle that colonized the people of Mr. Rwafa. But still, we have some Chimurenga youth that are still very bitter with any white person. And these Chimurenga youths, they had already been convinced of killing Mrs. Quayle. But then Mr. Mzamane, who is Selina's father, being part of that trip, had managed to convince them that whatever you had agreed with my friend, and the friend was Rwafa, because when they wanted to attack Mrs. Quayle, Rwafa conveniently disappeared, hiding. In other words, he doesn't want to be seen he doesn't want to be recognized to be the one behind it. But then they had already agreed, let's kill Mrs. Quayle. But because of Mzamane, the plan had been halted. And we see Mr. Rwafa is very angry. Later on, as they're celebrating the party, I want people to know the killing of the ducks was one day before the birthday party. Now later on, it's like Mzamane sets the reporters. He plans a way in which you tell a reporter something, go and ask him this question. There's a place the book shows Mr. Mzamane tries to conveniently disassociate himself from the group, and he looks like he is looking at the sky. He's looking at the roof. So Mr. Rwafa, he feels aggrieved. He feels offended by the actions of Mzamane. If I get another lesson, I'll explain this one better. It is kind of a long story. Mr. Mzamane feels offended by the action. Mr. Rwafa feels offended by the actions of Mzamane, and he sets out to exert revenge. What tells us? There's a point that Mrs. Rwafa is asking, have you seen your father? Later on, as Rondo is recalling, he thinks, why was my mother asking me whether I had seen my father? And you remember the father is also associated with second street murders, whereby someone is killed in a way that is made to look like an accident. What happened to Mr. Mzamane? Mr. Mzamane was killed and then it was made to look like an accident. Therefore, we highly suspect the hand of Mr. Rwafa. And as he was doing that, because someone will say, Teacher, you have deviated. What does this one have to do with the Rondo? It had everything to do with Rondo, with his current misery. The current misery being the loss of his children thanks to his own father. Even as Rondo is mourning, this guy is mourning, he never even lives. We want to see actions of the father on the son. You've killed my children, so it is affecting the son directly. And at the same time, it sends the son into a state of misery. There's even a time the father puts his hand on he puts his hand on Rondo's knee. And Rondo feels, as much as this one is, I'm wearing jeans. Why do I feel so cold? Why do I feel so cold at the touch of my father's hand? And also the mourning. He has been put into mourning because of the actions of his own father. That tells you some parents have no disregard. How can Rwafa kill Rondo's children, leaving him in mourning? Just by summarizing it from those three parameters, you already see how some parents have no regard, or in other words, how some parents disregard their children and make the children to be in a state of misery, making the children to be miserable. So far, allow me to summarize. Later on, I provide whatever I've just discussed in writing because I'm also looking at our time is up, but allow me, I cannot live without summarizing. The points we have looked at: what has the father done to the son, making him misery? We've looked at breaking the guitar, 1. Number 2, joining the neighbor to beat the son. Number 3, refusing Selena. Number 4, getting him a job in which he's not happy. Number 5, killing Rondo's children. And up to that point, I'll want to conclude and then I'll answer someone's question. In conclusion, I've used this kind of conclusion that is, someone had already asked, how can you conclude using a piece of advice? Let me share. My conclusion for today is a piece of advice, and I'm saying my conclusion will entail, in conclusion, you can see it clearly displayed on the screen. In conclusion, parents should be as close as possible to their children to help them grow up positively. Grow up positively, what do I mean? They should have some regard for their children and gain confidence in themselves. What is gaining confidence in themselves? I try to allude to the fact that they shouldn't make them miserable. They should try every means possible to raise a child that will fit properly into their society. That makes up for my point of advice. And then one point, and if I'll not explain it to conclusion, the person can always chat me aside. Kindly explain on how Rondo had become a laughing stock. A laughing stock is this: they are making fun of him at the workplace. He is always a part of their jokes. And you know, when all the people are making fun of you, you'll be feeling miserable. But then, so that he can fit in, Rondo tries to laugh with them. That one can be found on page 28. It can be found on page 28. 1 minute, I read for all maybe who can listen. Exactly what am I doing to myself? His mind moved on to his colleagues in the journalistic fraternity and their attitude towards him. Why? While they did not exactly laugh at him to his face, they certainly did not take him seriously. They might have wanted to, but Rondo was one of those people who, at any gathering, inadvertently became a laughing stock. This one, even the book validates me. I don't think I need to read further than that. The one who asked the question kindly. make reference to page 28. If you still don't understand, please chat me in private. But even page 28 says a laughing stock. When people want to make a joke, you are always referenced as part of their joke. That is what you mean when someone is turned into a laughing stock. This final conclusion brings to an end my discussion for today. I wish to leave and hand over to the host. Teacher Martha, might you be having something to say maybe?
No, dear, I don't have something. I just want to appreciate that we have shown up and we have had a successful lesson. I was listening in from a distance. I want to appreciate the students for being actively involved. I think this is very, very interesting. Yes, let's meet tomorrow. Tomorrow is Saturday. What time are we meeting tomorrow?
Let's hear it from them.
Please tell me, what time do you want us to meet? Gloria had a question that is not answered. Okay, we'll come to answer the question, but what time do we meet tomorrow? Our 5 days go, yes, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Monday. And then Tuesday is a free lesson again. Now when you have to lipa, please make sure that you make your payment. Staki kuwa block out because hauja make payment. Just make sure that you pay. Just make sure that you pay. But tomorrow, what time? 7:30 p.m. Tomorrow we don't have our normal classes, so we can have any time. Haina issue. Kesho tuko. We either do
Someone
morning.
says morning.
Madam, what time are you okay? Let's first of all go with your time.
I'm mostly a morning person. Yeah.
See, I was thinking, why don't we do at 2 in the morning ndio watu wenye wanaenda harusi na rurashio tuweze kwenda. Maybe we do a morning. Naona mtu anasema 11. I'm wondering, okay, I know it's Saturday, some people would want to sleep in, but 9, how is 9? Is 9 too late? Too early? Ndio by 11 we are done. Twende kwenye tunaenda. It's that now ni mapema sana. Royal. Can we say 9
should
guys?
Be okay.
Yeah, I think 9 is okay. Yeah, let's do 9.
Someone is still saying 9 is too early.
No. Sasa hao ni watu wanataka kulalalala. Sasa wacha tufanye 9 so that by 11 people are able to go to their shughulis, eh? Sawa. So let's meet tomorrow. Invite your friends. Invite your friends and let them come and learn. And let's make our payments. Yeah, staki kwanza kuwafuata. I hope you don't want to do that. Sawa. Thank you. Tomorrow night. Yes.
Before we can make a conclusion, Gloria has a question. Is the story a memory to Rondo, or does it happen at that moment? What I'll answer to Gloria is the death of the children has just happened, and then he takes us into a flashback of what kind of a childhood did he have until he's someone who lacks the kind of self-esteem. In the long run, you see that he wanted to kill his father, but then at the end of it, it's like he's telling his father, just kill me. Killing my children, you've just killed me. Therefore, just finish me. So this guy, the children have died presently. But then, in understanding Rondo, we are moving into a flashback, understanding him from 4 years, 8 years, how he got his job into the journal, how he met Gaston, later on how his children died, how he met Selena. So we are working from the present into a flashback to understand what informs the kind of person that he is currently. I hope I've been able to answer Gloria. The rest of them, there are suggestions of time on when it is convenient for us. Could we just settle for 9?
Yes, we settle for 9.
Let's settle. So that whatever I want can still be done during the day.
Sawa. So what are we doing tomorrow?
They guide me. What question do they want? Which book?
What do you want us to do tomorrow? You can chat them.
Okay, let me see what they want to be done. Checkmate, truly married woman, silent song. Okay, let me pick on your choices. Checkmate and silent song. I always want to pick a complex one. And already they had expressed interest in silent song being heard. Therefore, let me choose on silent song. And also another lengthy one, checkmate. And then we can meet tomorrow. Can meet tomorrow.
All right, bye-bye. See you tomorrow at 9.
Thank you.
You.